What do you remember about getting sick and your fevers you used to have when you were younger?
My throat hurt like there was spikes in it. I was coughing up a lot. I had a big stomach ache, and I just felt like, I don't know, like when I would first wake up, I would like start coughing up a lot, and since I had a sore throat, it would like hurt my throat hecka bad, and then I'd have to run to the bathroom because I felt like I had to throw up. But I still pushed myself to do my daily activities like playing soccer and going to school to learn stuff. And then after a while, I started. They said I was gonna get surgery, so I was like, okay, it might be scary, but I know it'll make me feel better, and that's all I want. I felt scared at first about having surgery since I haven't had it before. But then when she said that it was gonna help me out, I was like, okay, I'll take it, even though it made me feel scared. I had to be brave, and then I had to overcome my fears. I put my trust in God, and then it came out, and I felt great after it. Like I didn't get any more sore throats. Like I would still get stomach aches, but they wouldn't be that bad. And then it went away, and then I started to have a normal life again. But for other people, I feel like it would scare them a lot. But just to let you know about me, I made it through, and so can you.
So, hey y'all, it's your girl Allie, and we just heard from AJ and how this experience has affected his life. And I think it's important to share a little bit about my history with my brother and also to understand like how this affected me and why it was a lot harder for me to deal with. His name was Robert, but we call him Robbie for short, and he passed away in 2005 from aplastic anemia. He was diagnosed in 2004, so they took him to the emergency room and they did some blood work, and they knew right away that there was something wrong. They had told us it was either cancer or aplastic anemia, and at the time we were just praying it wasn't cancer because we didn't really know too much about aplastic anemia. And I'm told that he would have had a better rate of survival if he had cancer versus aplastic anemia. You know, he got sick and it was an autoimmune disease. And ultimately, he had no immune system. His red blood cells were attacking his white blood cells, which he needed to fight infection. We were washing our hands every day, keeping everything clean. We had air purifiers everywhere. We couldn't be around him if he was sick. And I know it was really hard on my parents. He would get blisters in his mouth. He had blisters all over his hands. You know, he really wasn't happy about the treatment. We had got a call that they thought he was going to pass away that day. He ended up not passing away that day. I remember it was June 3rd. It was my last day of 7th grade. And my dad called and said that the nurses thought that, you know, he wasn't doing good. His health was declining and that we should come straight to San Francisco. He was at UCSF and I had got that call already, so it wasn't as scary as it was the first time. We went to the hospital right around my mom's birthday and right around my brother's birthday. So my brother was singing happy birthday to my mom. He had tubes in his throat, tubes in his nose that were helping him breathe. He wasn't comfortable. And so they removed them and he was breathing on his own for a little while. So we had good news, and I remember we were across the street from the hospital and my mom came running out screaming and crying. My brother had passed away. I never thought he was going to pass away. I never thought that. I was young. I was 11 and I don't think I realized how serious it was. He was my brother. I'd been with him my whole entire life. It was just him and I. And I remember they had a code, you know, code blue or code red or something over the intercom showing that, you know, he was declining. And I was in the elevator with this man and I was 11 and I remember telling the man that my brother just passed away. And I remember now looking back, the guy really didn't know what to say. And I can't imagine being an adult in an elevator with an 11-year-old girl who's telling you her brother just passed away. And I think that moment stuck with me a lot because I was walking around like a chicken with my head cut off. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to accept it. I couldn't believe it. I was just like numb. And I remember just riding the elevator and just walking around the hospital. My parents were, you know, dealing with it themselves. And so it was really hard at that age to deal with that. I was very confused. It was life-changing. And then my father passed away 3 months later. Fast forward to me having my own children. My mom was always worried, oh, have blood work done just to be certain, just to be careful. And I would always tell her, no, he doesn't need that. He's fine. You can't just order a blood test. The doctor has to do that. So I would always get upset with her when she would bring that up. Only when he was 5, we started noticing him having fevers a lot. He would be on antibiotics all the time. He would get white spots in his throat, and we would take him to the hospital, and they would do like a strep culture, and it would be negative, but they would give him antibiotics anyways because they see the spots in his throat. And eventually we noticed that he was sick all the time, and it seemed like there was something wrong. And the doctor wasn't too concerned. She said he was, he was in kindergarten. He was at that age. It was actually kindergarten. He was 5 when we first started noticing. So they said it was normal. Kids are, exposed to all of these germs. It's something that, they weren't too concerned about, which I just took the doctor for what they said. And then COVID happened, and COVID was a thing, and we had got COVID in May 2020 when Apollo was 6 months. And after we got over COVID, my son still started having, fevers, and he would get these spots in his throat, and the doctor just wrote it off as the virus just shedding out of his body. It was really new. They didn't know a lot about COVID, and she was kind of just writing it off as COVID. And as a mom, I didn't want there to be anything wrong. I think I was scared that there was something wrong. If she was saying it was fine, then I was like, okay, great. That's what I want to hear. It was like every 11 days, we could kind of pinpoint when he was going to have the fever. So my mother-in-law told me, just take him to Children's Hospital. Take him to Oakland. They'll figure it out. They're a really great hospital. Well, one of the nurses told me, she advised that I should start taking a journal and write down every time he had a fever, what the fever was, every time he was on antibiotics. So I did, and we kind of noticed a pattern. And when I presented that to his primary doctor, she agreed that it wasn't normal. His symptoms were bad stomach pains, and he would not eat at all, and then he had sores in his throat. So we started with the gastroenterologist. We took samples. Everything looked fine. Well, then I got a call. Do you remember this? I got a call from the rheumatologist and to set up an appointment, and I didn't know what a rheumatologist was. So I Googled it, and I was terrified. I didn't know if the referral was based off his gastroenterologist, so I was terrified. And then when I finally spoke with somebody, they told me it was just protocol. I started working with the rheumatologist. She got to know AJ, got to know his symptoms. She ultimately thought that he had something, it's PFAPA. It's a periodic fever adolescent syndrome. I will put the word down. It's a long one. I'm not going to try to pronounce it right now because I'll probably get it wrong. But it's an adolescent syndrome. So with steroids and just healthy diet, she thought he would grow out of it eventually. We would notice that the fevers weren't coming so often. He was gaining weight again. We thought that he was kind of getting over it, and then he started having a cluster of fevers again. He battled it he would get a few fevers, maybe every couple months. We'd give him a dose of his steroid, and it would take it away. And I remember not wanting to give him the steroid because I didn't want it to be real. I had a hard time not associating his illness with my brother's. So I ended up taking it out on my mother when he was diagnosed. I called her. I said, are you happy? You got what you always wanted. There's something wrong with him. And I know that was really unfair of me to do. But at that time, this was about 4, almost 5 years ago. So I think it was easy to just take it out on her. And it took me a while to understand that this was different. The PFAPA is anti-inflammatory disease. My brother was an autoimmune disorder. I really, really struggled with not relating their diseases together. So I had to accept it and be there for AJ, and I struggled with it. And I'm really thankful that Anthony is so strong and he's able to deal with the hard stuff that I wasn't able to. After, it was about a year or 2 he had it. We were giving him the steroids. It took me a long time. It took me a few fevers to give him the steroids because I felt like giving him the steroid was making it real. And once I gave him the steroid, it would take his fever away. He would be fine. He would go back to school. So eventually that was just his routine. He would play baseball. He would be fine. And then out of nowhere, just lifeless on the ground, high fever, just couldn't eat anything. And it kind of was just our new norm. We ended up having to make a 504 plan with his doctor, so his absences were excused. So we ended up, if he wasn't feeling good, his teacher was on board and he would stay home. As he started, not having less and less fevers, we thought he was growing out of it, and then he started having a cluster of fevers again. So the doctor, his rheumatologist, suggested having his tonsils removed. So we had his tonsils removed. I was the one who ultimately decided that he should get his tonsils removed if that's what the rheumatologist suggested. So it was really scary for me to put him through that surgery because I felt if anything was wrong, it was my fault. So we got him this bear. It says, Big Brother, Super AJ, strength and prayers for his surgery. Putting your child through surgery is one of the hardest and scariest things ever. And I really struggled with it because it was my decision. And when he woke up, of course, I rushed in there to go see him. And I thought he was going to be sleeping, quiet, like, AJ, wake up. He was screaming, he was coughing, he was choking. He just had surgery on his throat, so I panicked. I told him I couldn't see AJ like that and that we needed to switch. So I called him frantically, hung up the phone. He didn't know where I was. He was trying to find me. He ultimately got there. We switched. He was able to deal with AJ at that moment where I took a breather. I think it was really triggering for me because the same hospital that my son is having surgery is the same hospital that I would go to every day for my brother. So it was really hard for me to separate that. We're very thankful that he made it through his tonsil surgery. He still has fevers now and then, but I want to say he's only had about 2. He's had his tonsils out since November 2022. I think it definitely helped him. We don't see the fevers as much, but we do notice he has other health issues. My biggest fear was PFAPA not being the only thing or them not diagnosing him correctly, it being something else more serious, because this type of disease isn't something you can just run a test for and it say yes or no. But AJ has done jiu-jitsu, he's done soccer, he's done baseball. He has never let his disease hold him back. And I think after accepting this for what it is and being there for my kid, I think that we just live with this and we just celebrate him, every chance we get. I see a lot of improvement in him. I feel like he has made a lot of progress catching up because he's missed a lot of school. So I just feel blessed that I'm thankful that it's not something more serious. There's mothers out there that have children that are fighting cancer and illnesses that are more serious where they're hospitalized. So I have to just be thankful that we have him today, be thankful that it's not something more serious, and just take it as it is every day and pray that it's something that will go away and that we don't have to deal with in the future. I'm very thankful for my husband. I think Anthony picks up where I slack. I panic in high stress situations. I have a hard time staying calm and I have anxiety, so I shut down and my anxiety cripples me sometimes. And I think that Anthony is better at staying calm even when he's not calm inside. And I think you're really good at keeping it together for AJ. How do you feel? How did you feel when we started getting answers that there was something wrong with him?
I know the hardest thing for me was not being able to do nothing for him. Like nothing before the steroids, before we found out. Like when we would try the Tylenol, try the ibuprofen, it wouldn't work. And that definitely was the hardest thing for me, where you want to like help your child feel better. And
yeah, and we noticed that he was always on antibiotics and just going through bottles of Tylenol, and I think it was scary. One of the main things that I want to point is the doctor or the nurse at Children's Hospital suggested that I take notes and present that to his primary, because his primary doctor wasn't taking it serious. And as a mother, I knew that there was something going on. It just seemed like he was always sick and he was always on antibiotic. Your primary doctor has to be the one to put in the orders to do testing. So if they're not taking it serious, it's kind of hard for one, you don't want to borrow trouble. If your doctor's telling you it's fine, you want to believe that. But I think it was really great advice for that nurse to tell me to take a journal and then present that, because that was ultimately what made the doctor see and know, okay, yeah, this isn't normal. He was like lifeless. Like his legs, like he couldn't walk, he couldn't hold his body up, he didn't have any strength, he couldn't eat anything. Like I would be working all day, making dinner, Mom, I don't feel good, or I'm not hungry. And I remember one time you came home from work and he's like, where's AJ? Because we typically eat at the dinner table. I'm really big on that. And he came home, where's AJ? Dinner was ready when he walked in. And I said, oh, he's not feeling good. And Anthony went over there and put his hand on his head and he had a fever. Him saying that he didn't want to eat was like the first indication, that was the first symptom of his fever. So Anthony got to the point where he knew, oh, his stomach hurts, let's check for a fever. And then we'd have to open his throat and look. And it was like stomach, fever, white spots all the time, every time. And I feel like after his tonsils were removed, the symptoms were changing a little bit. He would get a fever but no white spots, or he would get white spots with no fever. So before I would give him the steroid, I would take him to the hospital just to do a strep culture. The ER would say, oh, it's negative. And
but
they
would probably have.
Yeah, and I was like, no, we already know. And I would tell her his history. I just wanted to confirm that it was negative for strep before I gave him the steroids, because you're this kid's parents. You're the one taking care of him. You're the one giving him this medicine, and you have to make sure that the doctor's like, I have to be the one to decide, because Anthony works a lot. So, and I work from home. So I ultimately do doctor's appointments, school stuff, drop-offs, things like that. He, works 6 days a week, 12, 13-hour days every day. So I ultimately would take initiative to give him the medicine. It was hard. It was scary. And it was something that I had to work towards and work through, being able to make those decisions, because I was scared to. I was scared of making the wrong decision and my kid being affected by it. But I feel like as a mom, you have to put your feelings on the back burner, and everything I was worried about and everything that I was associating with my brother. And you have to tell yourself that, like, this is your kid. If you're scared, imagine how they feel. And so I think that was ultimately what helped me get the strength, is just knowing that what I'm going through is nothing compared to what my kid is dealing with. So I think it also like brought us closer, and him being there for me in times like this just makes me really appreciate him. And I feel like that's why we're kind of doing this journey. We're putting it out there. We're making memories. Life is short, and we have these videos that we're making. We're having fun. We're expressing ourselves. We're sharing a little bit about our background to learn a lot more about me and what I've dealt with. And I think we'll share a little bit more going on about my dad passing. He died unexpectedly. This journey with AJ and his health have really made us grow, really brought us closer together as a family, and just made us appreciate life every day and celebrate life. And we're having so much fun making these videos. My kids are getting along, and I think that, we have a lot more to share, our journey, how we met, and all of that. So stay tuned. We appreciate you guys being here. We're having fun, and the best is yet to come.